Hi everyone. I'm Oscar. I'm here alongside Nilu and Alice as we present for our public policy course for Dr. Kane on our presentation on the digital divide. Just to preface the how we came to the topic alongside everything that we've been learning this summer and alongside our DC trip, where we got to delve more into our topic, we came to the digital divide as the three of us um, are in technology in some capacity in our roles at our different sites, but we're all three of us are working on our EDD in learning technologies. So for us being able to marry our love of educational technology and what we're learning in policy seemed ideal in wanting to see what the research says on such a topic as a digital divide and making our own recommendations on policy as a whole. So to kind of give information, especially as an entry point, if you're not familiar with what the digital divide is, the context of the problem is the importance of digital connectivity and learning that is affected by all, but it was really emphasized during the COVID pandemic. There is a lack of reliable internet access and adequate devices, and it's become a significant factor in contributing to educational inequalities, especially for those of us that are in education and saw the effects of COVID and how quickly some schools were able to pivot and how slowly some schools weren't able to and are still struggling to. That was a big thing. So even when students are also provided with devices by their school districts, they may still have challenges in accessing the internet for their coursework, whether it's because of their home or their community or other socioeconomic type of factors and cultural factors as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it along for current policies.
Okay, so to effectively address the scope of our problem, we narrowed our policy research on digital equity in just California. And as Oscar mentioned, because especially our team members are California educators, that we personally have seen this issue being brought forth. And we wanted to also address the current policies that the state has, and one of them being the California Senate Bill 156, allocating more than $6 billion for expanding the broadband infrastructure. And additionally, on top of that, we have the federal infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that provides a minimum of $100 million specifically for the broadband infrastructure expansion in California. So even with the current policies, though, for support, there are still disparities in internet availability, such as including financial constraints, signal obstacles, and even variations of home location. So on top of those, also we have the ACP, which is the Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides a stipend of $30 a month to eligible households, but the participation remains really low. So noting these barriers and the current policies, we were brainstorming how we can help, add other initiatives. And there are 5 recommendations or policy recommendations we wanted to address. And number one being the public training, which is this will help address challenges of digital equity. It's crucial to empower the public, the individuals, with necessary tools and resources to become digitally literate. So we can't just give them a laptop or just access to internet. We really have to train on how to access or how to use. And number two, state can also leverage its networks of adult education centers, public libraries, and even community colleges to offer these trainings and actively promote the ACP program, which is the Affordable Connectivity Program. And number three, we should also be targeting low income households for connectivity, which means we want stronger support for the local broadband development in these undeserved communities. Fourth, we want to also improve broadband maps. So basically, where like Wi-Fi signals are very like it's spotty, or basically with the accurate data that we have, we want to allocate these investments equitably. So it's not just we're just like providing internet service to whoever. We just want to target those who really need a stronger connection. And lastly, we want to also respect the community values, especially like the tribal lands. We want to talk about like whilst having proactive engagement with these communities, we want to actually be sensitive to how they could adopt to this as well. And also we looked at couple data that we wanted to highlight. The results that could relate to the policy recommendations, and also and the one data we saw was the income households were less likely to have access broadband and devices. This is a data that we fetched in 2021. And obviously low-income households were less likely to have access. So the question is why? And it all goes back to, is it awareness? Is it just that, people are fearful of like how they could afford it? Or is it really unwilling to adapt to this? So basically it all goes back to the three components of broadband access. And another data that we have wanted to highlight was that only a third of California households that are eligible for like the federal subsidized internet, they're only a third taking advantage of it. So we just want, but as you see the data from 2021 to now 2033, it's still going up, trending a little up, but still, I mean, it's not, I feel like we'll see that we're not as, we don't have that much awareness for the people that actually can take advantage of the subsidized internet. And Nilu, I want to pass it off to you for the next part.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So the sources that we kind of got our information from, we have a list of them on the poster. One of them was the Public Policy Institute of California, California Department of Education. California Department of Education specifically has sections about virtual learning, the regulation and policies and act for in terms of virtual learning and how the whole system works, how and the initiatives they're doing to help all students from all different backgrounds and different socioeconomic school districts have devices to work with. So California Department of Education is one of those sources that we keep going back to get updated and see what new information they have on there in terms of digital equity. Another one is the U.S. Government Accountability Office, which this website was really helpful in understanding the amount of the budget that the government is allocating for broadband, but still the issues that are still consistent within bringing broadband to those lower income or like remote communities, because finding people who want to work there, allocation of job force over there, and a lot of like other underlying issues that are in bringing the broadband to all those communities. So that website, the Accountability Office website, had really great information for us that we used. We used the Federal Communications Commission, the USC Annenberg Network on International Communications, the U.S. Department of Commerce. We actually met with someone from the U.S. Department of Commerce during our visit in Washington. She went over all of their initiative and programs that they are having in bringing again broadband and making it available to tribal land and to like underdeveloped communities. And then PEW Research Center. So and also when we were looking for these sources, we kind of used a method to make sure that our sources are reliable, they're not biased, they're accurate, they're up to date. So we did kind of filter the sources, and we kind of stayed with these 7 sources because we knew the information was valid, it was reliable, it was not biased, the data was accurate. And also they were like, some of them were government websites, so we could trust the data that they were presenting and the information they were presenting. In terms of theory, we kind of looked at Kraft and Furlong theories that they have for policies, and looking at that, we kind of figured out maybe a late theory would be something appropriate when we're talking about digital equity and the digital divide. The elite theory refers to the policies proposed and enacted by an elite group in an establishment, which is usually not aligned with opinions of the public. And in terms of digital divide and statewide policies, we have seen some inadequacy and some deficiencies that from the policies that they have, because we as teachers who have experience working in virtual settings, or we're still teaching virtually, we have firsthand knowledge. But the people who are in charge of putting in these policies, sometimes they don't know the real issues and the day-to-day issues that students, parents, and teachers are facing. So because of that, that raises the importance of, again, the equity, affordable and equitable access. So bringing access to internet is important, but also bringing equitable access is really important, because again, in the COVID pandemic and when all schools shifted to online learning, a lot of those districts with lower socioeconomic students, they were having trouble with bringing equitable online education to students. So since 2020, the state government has established partnership with internet service providers and technology companies to deliver devices to students. And also they provide Wi-Fi hotspots in areas that they need. And then in 2021-22, the state budget also allocated $6 billion to build middle and last mile connections across California. So many free or low-cost initiatives provided by the private sector are useful, but again, they're not that realistic. When I was going through some sources, I saw Facebook has a program to help bring equitable education and online education to students, but in reality, a lot of students in a lot of communities, they were not able to use that resource, because again, it was not usable for teachers and students. Basically, in conclusion, I can say equity is one of those issues that really aligns with all the data and the research we have been doing in terms of digital divide, and then basically access, and then after that, equity, working together, we will be able to bring that online equitable education that we all want for students. I guess I'm done with the theory. If
I will pick up on our kind of group conclusions here. And one of the things with our conclusions is that although the federal and state investments do help narrow the digital divide, did help during the pandemic, the goal is still to expand the adoption so that it's a lot more effective if we are to pursue the ACP, or the Affordable Connectivity Program, because we still have a ways to go, right? So it's still something that we need to actively promote and that we need to actively be pursuing on a federal and state level. And these programs really helped individuals to become more digitally literate and can enhance internet access. And one of the pieces when we talked to Rebecca Sewell from the US Department of Commerce was a piece that she talked about where these tribes apply to have stronger, connectivity infrastructure, yet they cannot apply online for these programs, right? So you still have to meet these places where they are. If they apply, can they apply through regular US postal mail and things like that? So there are also things that cannot move completely digitally if that's where we want people to be and to meet them where they are as well. So this will help align with our nation's primary goals in providing and laying the groundwork for sustainable economic growth. Because if we want to lead the innovation wave with tech and all of these things, we really need to be at a competitive edge, even globally. So this is a type of state and federal movement that can affect international impacts in terms of careers and things that companies and individuals are that we're able to give them the space to innovate as well. And with that comes improved education. In our group, we have 2 virtual teachers in here, right? So that allows access beyond a physical classroom for access for education. You know, we're in hybrid programs ourselves, so we've seen firsthand what that looks like in having conveniences in online education. There's public safety that can occur, and there's healthcare that can happen, right? The wave of what's happened with telehealth and therapy sessions that are online and doctor visits that are e-visits now have really changed what medicine looks like as well. And the advancement of other national priorities as well that could come up. And I think just as a passion project from a computer science teacher and from two virtual teachers in this group, right? We would love to see the advancement of the closing of the gaps. And that's why we're pursuing what we're pursuing at Pepperdine, is to make an impact on how we on closing these gaps and providing as much access to different things as possible. So whether it's our schools' educational endeavors to reach more students via virtual learning, or whether it's being able to inform careers and things like coding and programming and things like that, we can definitely close the gap like that. And just for our references, we did use, and kind of like Nilu mentioned, we did use a lot of our experience from the DC trip as well, with a connection from Anthony Boulahud to the US Department of Commerce. And we were able to use a lot of what we learned in class from Craft and Furlong and all of the research institutes that we looked on. But thank you everyone for watching. And I think that's all, right?
Yeah, and just to, piggyback of what you were kind of talking about, being like having firsthand knowledge about the situations we're in as virtual teachers helped us with this project, because when you look at the broad scale, the big picture of like this amount of budget is allocated to bring broadband and all of those things that are going on, we don't know like all those little details that goes into putting in these projects and programs. And I remember that when we met with Rebecca in Washington, she was talking about like the process for the tribal lands, the process of even filling out the application was a problem for them. So they had to initiate another program that would help them with filling out the applications to be able to apply to bring broadband to their school districts. So the project itself brought about a lot of underlying issues that goes along with bringing access and bringing equity to the digital education world.
One other thing I really want to add is I think state of California is very lucky because we're able to partner with so many agencies, even tribes, schools, libraries, nonprofits. I mean, I think a lot of private sector organizations, as Nilo mentions, we're here to really make digital equity a reality and making sure like the community gets connected. And I think California is a really good example to close a digital divide. I know we do have more resources probably than other states, but if we make a really good example of our state, I mean, it could be definitely applicable to nationwide. And I think that's what we want to really go back to the recommendation for our policy, because if you look, I mean, just making the awareness to the public, I think that's like the major step. Is there anything else the group wants to add?
I mean, I think additionally, just to piggyback off of you, Alice, in California too, we boast a lot about these Silicon Valley and Silicon Beach companies like Meta, like Twitter, that SpaceX and Tesla that are hubbed here in our state. And yet we still have a ways to go in terms of closing the financial gap to access and all of those things. So it's a think locally, act, or think globally, act locally type of situation that will be interesting to see.
And I mean, we have like, compared to when we started with COVID and where we are today, we have had progress. Like we can see it even within our roles as teachers. We have had a lot of progress with all the programs that our teachers are being using right now. I know in the beginning we had problem with monitoring students online. Then there was this application, the software that the district bought, and now every teacher that is teaching online, they can engage with students. So a lot of those issues in bringing equitable education is being like worked on, there are some efforts being done. And I think from where we started and where we're now, we have made really good progress. As you said, Alice, as far as I know, in California and the school districts that we work, it has been a progress. And where we are today, we are at a much better place than when we started and when we went to during COVID, where no one knew what was going on. We couldn't even do attendance online, and everything was a mess. So we're in a better stage right now, and hopefully we can move on and like continue this progress.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, if there's a really strong alliance between districts and the state, I think, some of our policy recommendations could really come to life. And I think that's really good. Well, thank you, team.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you
you.
for hopefully everyone that watches this has food for thought in terms of the digital divide. Thank you, everyone.